Today on the Idiot's Guide, we are talking about are you busy but not stressed? Rapid de-stress strategies for the always on the go. And, if you're gonna dine and dash, don't forget your phone. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I think I just want to, I'm going to brag, okay? I'm going to brag about this because I think that I am terrible at handling stress. Yeah, that's the easiest way I can say it. No, I think the biggest thing that for me, I've recognized recently in processing some of the things that I have to process is I deal with a tremendous amount of stress, lots of plates spinning all the time. They're all on fire. And it's just, I know that's not healthy. I know. I see your face. Your face is going, wow, this guy's a serious case. But really, like, basically what it tells me is this, is that I don't know if I necessarily handle stress really, really well. I just suppress one at a time.
That's what most people do.
and compartmentalize it to the point where I don't allow it to affect what currently is happening. So, guys, hey, don't take my advice. Like, that is the worst thing you can do for yourself, because honestly, if you will eventually explode, like, there is no doubt about that there is no way other than to find a means to release this. And most importantly, not as a volcano, but more as a process of identifying and seeing this through in a healthier perspective.
Yeah, essentially you've got to belch out the, stress instead of it all coming out just as one giant explosion.
I need a belch break. That's what
There you go.
I don't know. Like, I think this episode, this is absolutely your area of expertise. Mm-hmm. I'm more of the person who has been a patient. I can't say that because you're not a doctor per se,
right?
But I have gone through the education process that you teach and have benefited off of that, as well as others that I've learned from that are in this sphere of not medicating, not throwing things at it that are, just quick tools. Like, I'm not going to down talk this stuff, but I've gone through cognitive processing therapy or behavioral therapy. And a lot of times what that is when you hit that trigger and you're right there at the peak of your intensity and you dismantle that thought. I was like, well, I'm not really thinking about doing any deconstruction at that point. More, I'm looking for gasoline. So, I'm trying to light whatever is in front of me on fire. And that's not healthy, but it's one of those things where it's like, after the fact, when I'm full of regret for what I just did because I lost my temper, then I can unpack it and, beat myself up about how terrible I am at processing stress. So that being said, you are much more qualified to advise in this category, and I will just be here saying, yeah, what he said. So,
well, to start out, there are a couple of things that we've got to talk about first. Okay, first, what is stress?
Oh, man.
How would you define stress?
Awake.
Okay, more than just the human condition.
Okay.
How would you define stress?
Anything that impacts the level of control, or like, I don't want to say like a controlling person, but you have this. You're counting on a specific process from happening, and when that derails, that something comes in, a variable happens, it typically encourages a stress, some sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
a change.
It's anything that happens outside the norm.
See, that was way shorter.
And so we talk about, so when we talk about stress, when we talk about, doctors talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which a lot of now they're getting rid of the D, not calling it a disorder, which is correct. It is not a disorder. It is the way that the brain naturally reacts to trauma, but it's not necessarily a stress. So stress is anything that is outside the norm. So we walk outside our front door in the morning and there is something there that we didn't expect. A piece of mail, it could be an Amazon delivery, whatever it is, that's stress. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative to be a stress. And so think about the day you were married. Was that a good day?
Yeah, it was a great day.
How stressful would you call that day?
Horrible. It was.
Did anything go particularly wrong?
I mean, nothing. No, not really.
Yeah. But it was a stressful day.
Yeah.
But it was such a good day.
My what is it? Why can't I think of what the best man? My best man forgot the ring. It was downstairs in a dressing room somewhere.
Nice.
And so my dad had to step up and hand me his wedding band so that I put that on my finger for a moment in that moment right there. It was kind of interesting to find out my dad and I have the same size fingers. So I mean, we are related. So
yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, stress is anything that happens that is outside the norm or what we expect to happen.
Yeah.
That's all stress is. Now, that stress can come in minor aspects like finding an Amazon delivery when you go out the door in the morning. It's not a big stress, but you've got to take care of that. You weren't expecting that. That could make you 30 seconds late to the office that day. Whatever. Not a big deal. Other stresses can be a lot more significant. And it's things like having your identity stolen or other major issues that may come up that are major stressors. Yeah. So they are impacting more than just one moment or one small period of time. They're having a greater impact.
Yeah, someone's sick, getting stuck in traffic on your way, losing a job.
Right.
From just bad conversations with individuals, somebody spills coffee on you. I don't know. Like also, there's 1,000 things that can really just raise your blood pressure. And yeah.
Right. That's stress. Okay. Now that's different from trauma. Okay. Now the reason I'm talking about these things is because a lot of times we lump them all into the same bucket. And they are not the same at all. And that's the first step that we have to recognize. There's stress and then there's trauma. So how would you define trauma?
Oftentimes it's an event significant enough to mark in your mind how you process things like stress, but enough of an event that it leaves, the best example would be scar tissue.
Would you say winning the lottery is a negative thing? Would that leave scar tissue? Winning the lottery. Suddenly being a multimillionaire.
No.
No? But would you be surprised to learn that the same reactions to someone who has endured what we typically see as negative trauma, someone who endures winning the lottery, the same kind of reactions?
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah. So, and that's because we, as a society, see trauma only negatively.
I'd be like, hey, let me help you with that trauma. If you just want to sign right here, that's all I need is I'm here to help,
Yeah. And we're talking about neurological processes, but that actually is, there are a lot of people who try to help lottery winners to deal with how to spend their money right, how to psychologically deal with this sudden change in their lives. And that's what it is anything that impacts your survival, whether positive or negative, anything that impacts your survival is a trauma.
Okay.
Okay. So now do you see the difference between stress and trauma?
Yes.
Okay. So we can't really call it PTSD because it's not a stress issue. It's a trauma issue.
Yeah, but how do you? Yeah, I mean, I understand that, especially when you make the distinction between the two, that
Mhm.
it's it's some kind of it's not stress.
Yeah, it's a trauma. It's not a
But yet they call it
stressor.
post traumatic stress, you
Right.
know. So maybe is it it's not attributing the trauma as the same thing as stress, but because of the trauma you experience stress or impacts or things like that.
Again, what is stress? When you're a traumatized person, you expect things to go negatively when it's a negative trauma.
Yeah,
So is it stress?
not necessarily.
No, because that's what you're expecting. Stress is anything that you are not expecting.
Okay.
Okay. And so you're reacting from a trauma brain when you've been traumatized, or you're reacting to stress.
So when I say that I'm spinning plates that are on fire, it's because I'm actually reacting from trauma, expecting there to be stress always, kind of a thing.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Okay. So you're dealing with stress. So you've got a lot of things that you weren't expecting to happen that are now happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's stress. Now, spinning a bunch of plates, that's just life.
Yeah.
You're a parent. That's just life. That happens.
Yeah.
We have to live and life happens. It's not stress. It's not trauma. It's just simply life. Okay. Now, stress comes in when we're spinning all these plates and all of a sudden something happens that we don't expect. That adds to the stress level. Okay.
Okay.
So when we're talking about all these things, this is why it's so important to understand how your brain recognizes these different aspects. So you've got trauma, which is your brain remapping the neural pathways in order to react in a more safety conscious way. Okay. So it is trying to survive. So your brain rewrites the neural pathways in order to survive better. That's the reaction from trauma. What they call PTSD is just post trauma wiring. The
Okay.
brain is simply rewired to this new behavior. Okay. Whereas stress is you've got all these things going on that are outside of what you expected to happen. Okay. Now they can come at the same time. These stressful events can then cause trauma, or trauma can then cause stress in you or others. But they're two very different avenues and two
Okay.
different ways that the brain reacts to those things.
So what do we do then from, this I guess where do we go from here? How do we do this on the daily
Yeah.
where
And
navigate that?
and I'm going to add one more thing on here because people are more aware of this, and we've been dealing with my own family because I am autistic. We've got that autism outburst situation,
Mm-hmm.
and that is simply the brain being overwhelmed. Okay, and so what I'm throwing out there is just because all three of these things, stress causes outbursts, trauma causes outbursts, autism causes outbursts, does that mean they're all caused by the same thing? No, the
No.
results are the same, but it doesn't mean that it's caused by the same scenario or by the same mechanism.
I think that's an important thing to pay attention to as you as an individual, but other people around you as well, to recognize that, you know, the end result might look similar,
Mm-hmm.
but the motivation or the reason it got there isn't necessarily all just lumped into a big category.
Exactly. And that's why it's very different when we're looking at how to deal with stress versus how to deal with trauma when we're talking about these quick fixes, these neurological tricks to help us get through them. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll work for one thing or another, sometimes it won't. But you've got to look at the root cause. Why is this reaction happening? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is this because of trauma? Is it because of stress? Okay. So those are really important factors to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to ask you another question. Now, all this is set up to the information that we're going to be talking about because it's all really important And you have to understand these things.
Guys, we have a 45-minute show here. So we'll see how good this is.
He told me 40 minutes
Well, we
today,
only
and
made
I'm
it to
like,
2 tips today, so
we're talking neuroscience here. Compress neuroscience into
okay,
40
yes,
minutes.
yes, diet science. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, why do we sleep?
It's important.
Okay.
It allows your brain to sort through the day's events and that kind of stuff. A chance for you to have kind of a reset, at least somewhat, I guess. I that would be the thing. I think your body to rejuvenate its energy that it's used over the last time you were awake. So.
Okay. So the first one you said is true, but that's only recently been found. The second one that you said, the body's rejuvenation, no, doesn't do that at all. The body actually spends only a fraction less in energy while it's asleep than it does when it's awake.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, okay. When you're talking about like I'm awake, sitting, reading a book, drinking a cup of coffee, I would say yes, but other than the fact that I deal with apnea, like losing my breath and that kind of stuff in a workout or something like that, I don't think quite applies in this
All right.
statement here.
So
You're right.
I found a really good article that goes through this. Now, this has been some research of mine for a long time. This is a great article that goes through and kind of outlines a lot of the same research that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
But this is from different experts, so you don't have to just believe me in my research. But one intuitive explanation for sleep that's easy to reject is that it's needed to conserve energy to rest and restore our bodies. We do lower our average metabolic rate while sleeping, but only about 15%, a measly 100 food calories a night, the equivalent of a slice of bread and butter. That seems hardly enough to justify the complexities, vulnerabilities, and challenges to sleep. Because as animals, if we didn't have the society we have right now, why would we sleep? The idea of you are unconscious for anywhere from 7 to 10 hours. We are vulnerable to any predator coming and attacking us. Why would we do that? Evolutionarily, biologically. It makes no sense for us to do that when we open ourselves to predatory threat to save 100 calories. And so we don't actually do it to conserve energy. One of the main reasons that we do it is in order for our brain to organize, to work through all of the external stimulus that we've been through for that day. Okay, so it organizes it. So let me just read it here because I think they explained it really well. Okay, reorganizing and reconfiguring the neural connections in our brains to respond to the myriad sensory inputs we continuously receive. These come from both the external environment as well as from stimuli within our own bodies, such as our heartbeat and signals from our gut. This ongoing daily process is a fundamental component of learning and memory. To stay efficient and effective, it also involves the pruning of seldom used synapses, the rearranging and discarding of old pathways and connections, and the construction of new ones. Consequently, every fleeting thought, every dream, every new idea is a potential reconfiguration of your brain that can happen only by using metabolic energy. Okay, now there's a lot of big words, there's a lot of buzzwords in there. Again, I think they said it better than I could have. I'm not very eloquent that way. These guys write research papers for a living. But essentially what it's saying is that we have to, in order to stay efficient, in order to be effective, our brains have to go through all of these neural connections, get rid of ones that aren't good anymore, confirm ones that did work. And again, this all comes to that survivability and that normalcy. And so it's our brain reconfiguring and reworking everything that we've been through that day to now we know what to expect the next day. This is the quote unquote new normal for tomorrow based on that night's sleep. Okay?
Yeah.
This is why it's so vital to sleep. Okay. We have to sleep in order for our brain to actually function. Okay. Now there's a secondary that allows the brain, it basically cleanses the brain of the chemicals and everything that builds up in the brain during the day. So there is a cleaning portion of that in order to keep the brain efficient, the biological portion of it. But it's the biological and the neurological that we need to sleep. Okay. Now, the reason I have said all of this is because the meditation process, the process by which we function and are able to be more efficient through meditation, is because it is simply allowing our brain to reconfigure those neural pathways. The methodologies that I teach with people who are suffering from post-trauma situations, whether that be military, whether that be things like anger management, anxiety, anything that comes along with any of those issues, abuse,
Yeah.
it's all comes back to being related to we need to rewrite those neural pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And by understanding how to rewrite those neural pathways, understanding what the brain does while it's asleep, and being able to apply those while you're awake through meditation, through any of these other processes, that's how we're able to reduce stress. That's how we're able to reduce that trauma reaction. That's how we're able to go through all of these things and be able to move forward. Now, they're different whether it's stress or trauma, but it's the same basic component of rewrite the neural pathways, recognize the neural pathways. Okay. And that's what meditation is all about. Now, meditation can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 hours. Now, the meditation that I'm talking about is not the sitting there with your legs crossed going, Om. That meditation, that is the mainstream corrupted meditation.
Right.
Okay. That is the McDonald's of meditation.
But I really like fancy yoga poses. It's fun, you know. My body doesn't naturally pretzel like that, so
Yeah.
you know, that's probably more stressful than anything, actually.
Now, the reason that they did those mantras and they did all those things was to help focus the mind, was to help, calm everything out. Having that just repetitive sound was helpful because they didn't have CDs back then. They didn't have tape players. They didn't have record players.
So I imagine you have this choir. Oh, we're just here for solarium sounds. That's all. It's just ignore us. We're just gonna hum in the background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was meant to be a repetitive thing so that your brain could just kind of focus on essentially sleeping while you're awake.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same, but essentially you're achieving a similar process through meditation.
Well, you said something earlier that really stands out to me about this, and I know we're gonna get into these little pieces of this, but it's almost mimicking what your brain goes through when you're asleep, and the science behind what it's going through. And I've seen and heard from. I don't want to say a lot because it's not a lot, unfortunately, but the science is there showing that. Guys, it's not a bunch of yoga poses bunk. It's the neuroscience behind this attributes to mental health instead of it just being, this you get in shape and you're extra stretchy. It's not that at all. It's you're mimicking something that your brain craves when it's sleeping, and you're doing a miniature version of that during the day that incorporates that. And the longer and more often that you do that, or more habitual you make that, your brain will thrive in.
Yeah.
So
the important part of it is meditation has a bad connotation. Okay, because you've got these images of the smelly hippie with shorts and a tank top sitting in the middle of a green field going,
good.
Ooh, that's not meditation.
Smell like incense and patchouli oil. And Yeah, maybe some mushrooms.
Yeah, yeah. That's not meditation. That is a corrupted version of meditation. Now I can say that's a corrupted version of meditation. So I am, as well as being a follower of Christianity, I'm a follower of Buddhism. But it is not the mainstream Buddhism that I follow. So I follow an ancient tradition called Theravadan Buddhism. And as part of that, you learn a lot of these ancient techniques of meditation. And because I'm a science guy, I come to any kind of spiritual thought with a science mind first. Looking at the history, what were they trying to accomplish? What's the science behind this meditation? What's the science behind their beliefs?
Joe Haslam, the science. No, it doesn't rhyme. Sorry, no, it doesn't rhyme. I was working on it there in my head.
And so I really researched the science of meditation and what really the roots of meditation are. So that's where I can fairly confidently say the meditation of today is crappy. It's actually bad for you. That's why I compare it. It is the McDonald's of meditation because it really doesn't do anything for you. It's the mainstream. It's what everyone thinks is hip or cool. Real meditation, true meditation, when you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, is being able to relax the active portions of the mind and allow it to reach into that portion of being able to remap, to reorganize the neural pathways. Now, neural pathways are just a correlation of one object to another object so that we know how to react in any given situation. Okay? Think back to pre-civilized days, and you are walking through a savanna and you see a big tail with a little poof of hair coming off of it. Now, your first thought is...
it's not a thneed, guys. It's not a thneed. What am I thinking? Dr. Seuss. It's not a thneed. They make thneeds out of those trees, but I don't know what it is. I can't remember the tree.
You see that, and our brain immediately goes to, that's a lion, I need to run.
Yeah.
Okay? Or hide, or whatever. You are no longer in that higher conscious level thought. You are now in instinct, I need to run. Okay? That's a neural pathway. That's the easiest way to explain a neural pathway is that lion, run.
Okay.
Now, everything else that we do has neural pathways associated with it. But that is probably the best, easiest to understand example of how a neural pathway works. Lion, run. Okay? So anything that we see, red light, brakes. Stop sign, brakes.
Yeah.
Okay? All these things, these are neural pathways that we use every single day. We don't even recognize them. Okay? But what we're doing when we meditate is we go into that state where we can allow the brain to reorganize these as needed, or what I like to do is more consciously reorganize these myself so that I have a little bit more control about how my brain is building these neural pathways. And that's one thing that I teach people who have been through trauma, how to remap those with a conscious purpose. Okay. But the things we're talking about today are all going to be helping you either get into that more calm state so that your brain can reorganize it, or how to reorganize it yourself.
So it's safe to say that, as I think about this, stress has been around for a very long time.
Oh yeah,
stress relief has been around for a very long time. However, some people have attributed stress relief, which is actually stress inducing, to some uncomfortable yoga class in a community center or a church group that you're part of, whatever.
Yes.
And because of that, they continue to just dwell in their stress, and it doesn't really do anything good.
Right.
But it still doesn't, it still needs to be addressed and said that stress has been around since the dawn of creation. Why? Because we, from the very beginning of our existence, however we came about, we've always had the response to instinct to run or react to, this surface. I sat on a hot rock with my, tunic uncovered and I don't know. I'm spitballing that. But the idea is like, ouch, you move fast, or you see a lion's tail or a dinosaur's tail. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, humans and dinosaurs did not exist at the same time,
All right. All right.
other than in the Flintstones.
That is a different episode.
Cartoons.
All right.
But it's exactly that. And so when we look at stress versus trauma, okay. So here we have human lion. Okay, human goes out into the savannah. They did not expect to see a lion that day.
Yeah.
And so now their stress levels are up. Okay, so they react to that. The body responds to that stress by increasing the aerobic rate. So you start breathing heavier, you start breathing faster. It increases the blood flow, so your heart beats faster. Now, the reason it increases the blood flow is because as you're going to be running, you're building up these chemicals in your muscles that need to be released through your lungs. Okay. And so you breathe faster, your heart beats faster, your muscles are suddenly tensed. Mm-hmm. And all those things are a reaction to lion.
Okay. So we're in the heat of that stressful moment. We are about to react to some situation. Somebody, we have to get somewhere and we're stuck in traffic. Now, some of these techniques, they do recommend closing your eyes. Please don't close your eyes if you're on the freeway, or anywhere driving. If you're behind the wheel of a vehicle, please do not close your eyes to do any of these. That's very dangerous. However, it is possible, only because I can personally say this, it is possible for you to maintain these techniques while operating a vehicle and driving down the road. So it's just making sure that you aren't completely immersed in that moment.
Yeah, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the better you are at it. That's the way it goes with anything. Yeah. And so you can do this. The key is just practice, and then you can do this while you're driving. You can do this anywhere you are in a meeting, in a contentious meeting with managers or employees or anything like that. These techniques work.
All right, so I'm gonna throw these, and we're gonna spitball. Yep. Okay. So the first one is deep breathing. And one of the techniques is just find a quiet place, sit or stand, close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose, counting to 4, holding your breath for a count of 4, then exhale slowly through the mouth for another count of 4, and repeat this several times. I've heard this called box breathing, and I've done this technique, especially if I'm going through something where I'm needing to stay in a state of mind. I usually use this kind of technique. I don't know if it's necessarily a count of 4. It depends on what I'm going through, kind of a situation. I've used it because I have tattoos, but I have used this technique.
It also depends on your lung capacity.
Yes.
And so if you're a smaller person, 4 may be too much. If you're a large person, 4 may not be enough.
Yeah.
So the key here is not the number. It's to take in a full breath slowly, hold it, and then do a full breath out slowly. Okay, yeah. That's the key. Whatever number that is, when I do this, I usually do 4, 6, or 8. I tell the person I'm talking to either a 4 count, a 6 count, or an 8 count. We like even numbers as humans. But whatever that count number is.
Okay.
And that's the key. And what I want you to think about why this works is, now, Adam, this is a little different for you because you're a veteran. But think back to your pre-veteran days. Okay.
Okay.
When someone came up behind you and jump scared you.
Okay.
Okay. What's the first thing you do other than hit them?
I jump and maybe shriek, I'd take a quick breath. I'm like, oh. Okay.
And then what do?
I have to take a breath to calm down.
There you go. That's exactly it. You take the deep breaths. Yeah. And it's a slow, deep breath. Mm-hmm. So you get that jump scare and you go, okay. And what does that do?
It quickly calms things down. All right.
So see, this is something that we naturally do.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, when we hear this in the tone of meditation, we run away from it. Oh, it's
We
meditation.
don't need all
It's-
that weird stuff. Yeah.
But this is stuff that we normally do. This is the body's normal reaction to stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so all we're doing is recognizing it and applying it in other moments of stress that isn't someone coming behind you and jump scaring you. You're in a conference room that's very contentious. And so now you just do the breathing because you're stressed.
Okay, so I'm going to throw the second one at you.
Okay.
This one's called 4-7-8 breathing. It says close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath for a count of 7, and then exhale completely through your mouth for a count of 8. This pattern can help you slow your heart rate and calm your nervous system. I can honestly say this one does not work for me. This one makes me gasp for air and I feel like I'm going to die, as well as be really stressed out.
Right. And again, these numbers, it's different for everyone. Now, the reason behind this one is because you're taking a faster breath in and then you're holding it and then it's a really slow breath out.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of more in those really alert moments where you need to take that deep breath or that quick breath in and then slowly breathe it out. Because what you are signaling is that everything's okay. The lion is gone. I am now in a good space and I am safe.
I think one of the things that I would say that it's actually not on here, but I learned this from someone. I'm going to give credit to her. I listened to her podcast, Dr. Caroline Leaf. She has a bunch of books, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. She is one of the leading individuals in neuroscience right now, which is good. I mean, they need doctors who are frontiering this kind of study because it's revealing things that really need to be, revealed. But it's not necessarily deep breathing like box breathing or this intense lose your breath sort of stop your heart thing. But it is it's a way to oxygenate. So when you talk about your brain and what it's doing in a reset, she has I can't remember the episode, but what I'll do is I'll make sure I link it on the video that we do, or when I post this, I'll actually link her episode that she talks about this. And it's just a quick technique where you basically take in through your nose an intense noisy breath, like literally as like aggressive, like you're about to just bring, like you've got a sniffly nose and you just got to like get it off of like from being a nasty running mess. Okay. Now don't, like, if you have one of those, please don't do this. But what you're doing is you're almost hyperventilating. So you're bringing that in for as much as you can bring in, as long as you can, as noisy. Make the face like you frown with your mouth and just make the face. And then when you're done at the top of that breath, instead of just holding it, now we're going to push it back out again for all of the air that's in. So we... and then you do it again. So she recommends it's probably do that 3, 4, 5, do it for about 30 seconds. And what you're doing is you're bringing oxygen back to the frontal cortex, which is your decision-making part of your brain. It's actually helping that decision-making process think clearly because you're reintroducing it to the oxygen flow that's been depleted because your body is going to rapid twitch muscles for reflex. And so it's just one of those things that I was like, yes, I do. And this one I do very often. So
the other thing that does is it creates a break. It's kind of like snapping your fingers.
yeah.
But it's like a biological snapping of your fingers as opposed to just like auditory. And so it triggers that reset in the biological function, like snapping your fingers.
Now, if you're in a conference room in front of 10 people and you're doing this, they're going to think things. Okay, guys? So if you need to, excuse yourself and go do this. but it really does help.
And never hesitate to do that, okay? It is better for you to do this because, again, we're talking about the neuroscience, the neurological process that's going on here, okay? If your body is suddenly getting to this point where it is becoming overstressed, that is damaging to your entire system. And if you need to step out, step out. Your health is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in these techniques, if you have to do that quick reset, then do a quick reset because you are maintaining your body's functions. Okay. As you do this more, what happens is that your brain will actually learn these techniques and will create those as neural pathways.
Yes.
And so just like when you see the lion's tail come out of the grass in the savannah and you run, your brain will learn that when you start getting stressed to use these techniques and it will calm you down. It creates neural pathways to any of these stressful moments. If you only do these when you are overstressed and the moment is over, that's what your brain will learn as to when to do these. And so you're always going to be too late. But if you learn to do these techniques as you're doing it, then what that does is it allows the body to recognize and calm down in all of those moments, just like when you're asleep. It's solidifying all of these pathways. Okay. This is science. This isn't hokum. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the way that the brain functions within these systems. It also, these neural pathways, the more stressed you are, the more your brain is going into that instinctual mode. You're going to react instinctually and not with a calm thought process. And so it's going to be attacking threats, which is never good in a boardroom. But when you are allowing yourself to be calm, you are in control of what neural pathways your brain is then actively using. Okay. You're combining these neural processes, you're combining the biological processes in order to be the best version of what you can be.
So the next one is something that I've used in years past. I don't use this very often, but I use it kind of like a relaxation technique, and it's called body scan. So you sit or lie down comfortably, close your eyes, and mentally focus on each part of your body, starting from your toes and moving up from your head. Notice any tension or discomfort and consciously relax those areas as you progress. I think one of the things that comes to mind is when I've worked with you, you talk about not just these parts of your body like my pinky toe, you talk about the internal function of my body. So moving the oxygen as I breathe in, visualizing the oxygen moving to my fingertips and then coming back, and all of those things to recognize kind of this consciousness of your entire body, your whole self.
Yeah, I find one of the biggest pet peeves I have with mainstream meditation and the corruption of meditation is this idea of empty your mind, think of nothing.
You are a cloud.
Well, you are a cloud. That's not quite as bad. It's still along the same lines. But the idea is you can't think of nothing. Your brain's always doing. Your brain needs to function. What you need to do is focus your mind on something. Your brain has to be functioning on something. You can't just think of nothing. That's not how the brain works.
Yeah.
Can you tell this is a pet peeve of mine? And this is one of the biggest issues with mainstream meditation is they try to teach people to empty your mind, and it doesn't work because that's not how the brain works.
Yeah.
And so what you have to do, and this is what the body scan does. It's also I think the next one on your list there is the visualization. Mm-hmm. Is it distracts the mind. So you start focusing on something, you start thinking about something. That's what you go to that allows you to essentially kind of forget the biological. That's not really the right way of putting it, but think about when you're asleep, you dream. Mm-hmm. And so there's some research, including these guys that I mentioned earlier, that dreaming is just that manifestation, and this is also in my research, that manifestation of the brain reorganizing all of these stimulus that you've had that day. It's why your dreams generally have something to do with what you've done that day, or it's somehow combining two different ideas together that's creating those neural pathways for future interactions. And so when you're asleep, this is what the brain does. And so when you're meditating and trying to get into this state where it allows your brain to kind of relax and to get into this, reorganization mode, that's what you need to do is you need to visualize. You essentially need to dream, but it's more of a controlled dream. And so that body scan, thinking about your pinky toe going up to your ankle, all that's doing is it's allowing the visual portions of your brain to get focused on that. And then the rest of your brain can now just work on everything else.
It really worked well. Like even with my kids, getting them to fall asleep pretty quickly was used like this. I would have them close their eyes and I'd kind of walk them through this. With guided visualization, which is the next one, that's exactly what you're talking about. Is like picture this. I want you to look at this. It's like you said. It's kind of a distraction tactic. But with my kids, one of the things I would do is I would start at their toes, and I'm like, I want you to make that really heavy, like you're just stuck in the mattress and you can't lift it. It's impossible to do so. And they're like, "See, I can still, Dad." And I'm like, "No, you just go back to sleep." But the idea is to just kind of get their focus and attention on like this entire body relaxation, as it's like you're just a gooey mess and that's it, and and that's, like you said, it's a way for your brain to process these other things without really recognizing that that's what you're doing.
Right, exactly. It's taking you out of that active process of the brain needing to absorb all this information because you've got all this external stimulus going on. And so your brain has to take all of that and try to organize it all into new neural pathways or modified neural pathways or anything. So if you've got sounds and people and, physical things that you're touching and all these things going on, your brain has to absorb all that and try to organize it in the moment so that it can better organize it later. And so when you do these visualizations, when you do the breathing, what that's doing is it's allowing your brain to focus on these other things so that it can then, without anything going on around you, which is why they did the Om, because it focused that idea without getting rid of all the auditory. So closing your eyes gets rid of the visual stimulus. Hearing the Om repeatedly gets rid of the auditory. Today, I just recommend people listen to, some calming music or something repetitive.
It's on YouTube. It's free, guys. It's free.
I'm not talking
through the insurance commercial and you're good.
Yeah, I'm not talking Linkin Park here. Or Beach Boys. They're repetitive, right? It's the same lyric all throughout the entire song. That's not what I'm talking about with repetitive, just repetitive sounds.
Oh man, I read an article that hardcore metalcore music is actually a form of that to me I can take naps to. So
my favorite band of all time, I guess I can't say favorite band of all time, but one of my favorite bands of all time, Apocalyptica.
Yes.
Okay. So they are, I don't know if you can call them metal because it's all cellos.
It's distorted. I mean, it's like hardcore cellos.
Yeah.
It's hardcore classical.
It's awesome music, but that fits into that same category because a lot of it's repetitive. They're not saying anything. Mm-hmm. There's no lyrics to it. And so because of that, it does actually fit that repetitive nature and you can actually meditate to it. That's the idea behind this. Okay. You're listening to something that's repetitive. That's going to distract you, but not focus on that. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense, the difference. Okay. So all these things happen so that your brain can then take all of that extra brain power and reorganize everything. Okay. And going back to in my opinion, bastardization of the original meditation techniques. Okay. Today they say, empty your mind, do all this. The original purpose of meditation, Okay. Going back to, Buddhist principles long time ago in India, that region in India, it was more than just India, but that's where we typically, it's easier to explain it that way. So when I say India, I just mean the entire region. It's a part of China. It's a part of Pakistan. It's that entire area. What they were doing was they were trying to learn more about their environment, learn more about the universe. And so they weren't just sitting there and going, and clearing their mind. They were doing that so that they could process the information that they understood to create new connections within the brain that would put two different concepts together to be able to understand it in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was all about. It was about achieving something more. It wasn't about emptying. And so the entire concept of meditation being emptying your brain is completely pointless. And again, in my opinion, a bastardization of, and I use that word very seriously, of what the meditation was meant to do and the science behind meditation. They didn't understand the science back then, obviously,
Right.
but they knew it worked. We understand the science now, today, but because of what people have done with meditation, the connotation is that meditation is a weird hokum thing when there's really a lot of science behind it. And so that's what they were doing, is they were allowing their brains to create new neural connections to be able to enhance their understanding of the world around them. And that's what it was all about. And that's what we do today with meditation, with any of these techniques, is we're using the neuroscience to help build new understanding and help ourselves to reduce that stress, to get out of those environments, to build new pathways, to continue to grow.
Okay, I'm going to cover the rest of these, but two of them.
I'll shut up now so that we can cover the rest of them.
Two of them are, in my opinion, were kind of redundant, but it's counting breath or breathing, and then finger breathing. And counting breathing is basically you inhale and count 1, then exhale again and count 2. And you do that until you get to 10. And then you start over again. I'm like, isn't that breathing? Like I feel like you're going to accomplish more. The whole point of it is obviously for you to focus on counting that breath, which is what we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes, which is deflection of what your brain is processing on the other side of that distraction that's happening here. And
it's that and something else. I know I just said I'm going to shut up, but
yeah,
I'll let you read the next one, and then I'll talk about how that's slightly different.
Okay. And then finger breathing. Hold one hand in front of you with the palm facing you. Use your index finger of the other hand to trace up the outside of your thumb as you inhale. Then trace down the inside of your thumb as you exhale. Repeat this pattern for each finger. So I think that their techniques reinforcing the same. Technically, we covered 3 different kinds of breathing techniques right up front. So 2 more techniques that do essentially the same thing as the other 3.
They do, except that these add, and I wouldn't use these as a first line. These are after you've successfully learned the breathing techniques and things like that. What these do is they actually create new neurological triggers to the breathing. And so the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then you start over. What it's doing is it's associating those numbers with your breathing. So what's going to happen in the future is as you see those numbers or when you feel stressed, you're going to think about those numbers and immediately your brain will trigger into the breathing. And so it's creating that neural association between the number 1, 2, etc. to the breathing. The same thing with the hand is now instead of just the concepts of numbers, you're adding visual and tactile input to the breathing. And so you're seeing your palm and you're seeing your hand moving or your index finger moving, and you're also feeling that on your other hand. And so it's creating not just this idea of a number, but it's actually associating your hand and the tactile sensation with the breathing. So anytime you do that, your brain will then trigger into the breathing technique.
I can say I do something similar when I box breathe. So when I box breathe, I use, I'll use my fingertip that's just kind of like, on the side, and I tap my fingertips with my thumb. So if I like count to four, I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth as I box breathe. But I kind of add that additional layer of just kind of what I'm doing in the process of my breathing to continue to I don't even know why I do it. It's almost subconscious.
It is. It's a neural pathway.
Yeah, and it's just something that keeps me on task so that I'm making sure that my breaths are what they are and they stay there. For me, I think one of the things that it helps me with to relieve some of the stress or calm me down is that it's an area that if I feel like I have or I've lost control of that, that's often my stress is I can't, I don't have any, there's too many things that could go wrong in this moment. That, even when I'm, in public or something like that, doing those box breathing isn't something that I necessarily have to isolate myself to do. And so in standing in line in a busy location somewhere and I'm box breathing and tapping my fingers, nobody knows that I'm doing that other than they see my fingers that I'm tapping. And so they're like, okay, is he ticking a bomb? There was a movie
You
about
could be
this.
counting change.
I'm like, yeah, I could be seeing how much groceries are going to cost here in a second, whatever it is. But it's that kind of stuff that I realize now, like that's probably somewhat similar to like finger breathing.
That's exactly what it is.
Man, I tried to discredit it and you just brought it back to seriousness. Okay.
And so all these things, they're again, we're just talking about creating neural pathways. We're just allowing our brain either to create these neural pathways to calm ourselves down, to distract part of the brain so that the brain can then reorganize these pathways. This is all neuroscience. Meditation, true meditation, not the hokey mainstream meditation. True meditation is great. And when it's based in neuroscience, has so many benefits to the human brain and the human body.
Mm-hmm. This next one was interesting. I read a book, and I'll quote the book and probably link it. For individuals, it is definitely a religious book, but it's not a religious book. It's called Finding God in the Waves, and it's just kind of a journey of a guy named Science Mike, that left his. He turned into an atheist. He created a pseudonym for himself and was speaking against the church on chat forums all over the place and served in his local church at the same time as like a deacon or something. I was like, wow, that's nuts. But it's a neat story for him because he talks about the neuroscience. He talks about meditation and what this does. And one of the things he works through is something called mantra repetition. And I'm not meaning like name it, claim it kind of stuff or anything like that. It is literally something, again, that we're talking about development of a neural anchor. And when we're using something like a word, calming word or phrase such as peace or relax or I wouldn't pick like traffic or money or bills, like pick a word that like the wind, something that you feel like brings a sense of, like if I was experiencing that moment right now, that's good. I guess I don't know if like that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what the mantra was designed for. It was a trigger for the brain. It was a relaxation for the brain. It was to help get rid of some of these external stimulus. But what I like to use is when I'm work with people on this is find an object that has no association to anything whatsoever. Okay, because even something like wind can have an association.
You're like, hurricanes. Oh, no.
Exactly. And so now that destroys the ability of that mantra word to actually be calming anymore.
Okay.
Some people will like to use pictures of family members. Well, what happens if something happens to that family member? Well, it's already got associations to it.
Yeah.
And those will override anything that you attach to it. So I like them to just pick up a random object. Usually I tell them just go on a walk somewhere and pick up a rock. It has absolutely no association to them whatsoever. It's not tied to anything. It doesn't look like anything. It's just a rock. I've used things like little potted plants, fake potted plants so that they don't change. And that works into the visualization side of it as well as the mantra side of it. And anytime, so what you do is you apply neural reactions or neural pathways to that neural anchor that you've created, the mantra. And now your brain, whenever you think about it, will automatically trigger a response reaction. Just like you see that tail coming out of the savannah, you run. This will be, you think about that object, rock, whatever, and you will immediately go into the breathing or the calming or anything like that. That's what that mantra does, is it creates a new neural anchor. You just want something that's a blank anchor because it's already got a bunch of neural connections to it. When you think about that object, all those neural connections are going to come with it.
Okay. So the last one is, I think we've really covered this in the mantra stuff, or the visualization as well, but mini mindfulness. And so it's take a moment to become aware of your surroundings. Notice the details, the colors, the textures, the sounds. Paying attention to the present moment can help you shift your focus away from stressors. I'm going to say this. I know I've mentioned it before already in this episode, but I have PTSD, or what we know, PTS. And with that, I have moments, depending on the scenario, that I will lose track of where I am entirely. And oftentimes it has to do with memories of different situations attributed to why I have PTS in the first place. And so, it could be a smell, it could be a place, and a lot of times, if I'm tired, it's even more easy to aggravate me. It's very easy, and so I have to be careful about that. And this oftentimes is something that I'll use in that moment to identify. I'm driving a car down the road, and I struggle with this. If something hits me, it is like a wall that just smacks me, and I have to look and go like, okay. I have air conditioned leather seats in my car, and I'm able to use electronic devices to send music and listen to whatever I want on earth, and all of these things, these luxuries that are here. I've got cup holders, like something as simple that I'm not drinking from a canteen in the middle of a desert. It's not 185 degrees where I'm at, and like all of that stuff that attributes to a normal trigger if that happens. And I don't want to say that other people, they're going to have different triggers. These are moments for me that I'm just kind of unpacking when I have used mini mindfulness, and typically it's exactly that. I'm just bringing myself back to the current present space, with identifying things that are surrounding me that aren't associated with the other space that my mind has gone off to.
Yeah, and so it's not necessarily PTS, so it's PTW, post-trauma wiring. So
Okay.
I really do want to make that distinction, because all that's happening. I'm going to talk about this. I know we've gone way over time. I'm sorry, Adam.
Yeah, how long do you want to talk about this?
He tries to keep me in line, just so that you all know. He tries to keep me in line. I go wild.
I'm sure eventually we'll get back to the standard time, but
eventually, one day. So what happens is these events, whatever it may be, have created that neural connection within your brain, that smell, that the sun at that specific position, or a combination of factors, the sun at that position and the smell, the brain has associated that those are danger.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's just like that tail coming out of the savanna grass. Your brain recognizes that those factors mean danger.
Yeah.
And so you react that way. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. So I don't like calling it a disorder or stress or anything like that, because your brain is functioning perfectly normally in that moment. You are reacting to a perceived threat. The difference is there's no actual threat. You are no longer in the scenario that actually causes a threat. Your brain has just triggered to that. And so what these things do, the mini mindfulness, a lot of these other things, they allow you to recognize, I am not there. You recognize, you look at all of the other factors. There's a huge equation that goes into this. I've got it, part of it written on our whiteboard here in our office. And, it is a massive equation, how the brain processes all of this information. Okay. And it takes in just massive amounts of external stimulus. But what you need to do, and it looks for the closest match. That's the best way to explain it in a short way. What you need to do, and why this mini mindfulness works, looking at what's actually around you, is you need to show your brain that no, we are not in this situation because these other variables don't match that other scenario. And so now your brain recognizes, oh, we've got a disconnect here. A couple of these variables may match that are significant, but every other variable doesn't. And so now we can calm down.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get to that point where you're actually using your logical brain as opposed to your instinctual brain, it takes some of these other techniques. You have to do the breathing, you have to do the sounds, and that's where you create that break. So that really deep breathing, the almost passing out breathing, these other neural anchor techniques. And then you can start bringing in and recognize, okay, we've got these other variables that are involved. I'm not in that situation. And then your body starts to calm back down.
And I think this is where I've recognized where like my experience in CPT is helpful. Only because of the fact that I have to come back down out of this spike that I'm experiencing in my emotions or my stress, and then once I'm there, then I can kind of look at this thing and say, what is my mind, what the truth in it. Cognitive processing therapy, I'm like, I don't want to spend another 20 minutes unpacking what that is. So look it up, but it's essentially a toolbox to unpack things like thought distortions, where you are telling yourself the world is full of this, or I'm a bad person, or all the different things, and teaches you to reconcile with those things so that you can get back to a positive outlook.
Yeah.
And
now, all of these things are very quick and easy to do.
yes.
Okay. And that's why we're sharing them, is because these are things that you can teach yourself, you can work through, and you can apply them.
Yep.
I'm going to share one very personal thing here. Okay. And how you can apply these to more than just, calming down. But this is how this methodology works. Okay. So I have a very, very shy bladder. Okay. A lot of people have shy bladders. I've got a very shy bladder. And so I used these techniques to help me use a restroom if I have to use a public restroom. And so I have associated touching something cold with urinating when I'm in that surrounding. And so if I'm in a public restroom and someone walks in, I could be midstream and my body shuts it off. That's how shy my bladder is.
So no high fives at the urinal.
Oh, and no, it may be related to, the autism or anything like that, but it is like a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Road trips, it's horrible. So anyway, what I do is I will touch the metal on the urinal, so the piping or whatever, and just touching that and feeling that cold sensation triggers my brain that it is okay. Okay. That's how it works. It can be something like that.
What if it's like a cold steering wheel? You just
Well, that's not metal, so I'm safe there.
okay. All right.
I associate other, standing at a urinal as part of it.
I
as
just
well.
think like cold surfaces. You're like, brr. Oh no.
But no, and so the reason I say that is because if you find yourself having these situations when you're driving a lot, so traffic is one of your triggers or sends you off. Find something in your car. Put a little, stuffed animal in your cup holder if you have one, and then just reach over and touch that. And that tactile sense is stronger than visual. So because we have fewer of those and because we're a visual animal, that tactile sense has a stronger influence on redirecting the neural pathways. And so what you can do is you can train yourself that anytime you touch that, you calm down. And so you could be in horrible traffic, feel yourself getting angry and aggravated. You just reach over and touch that stuffed animal. And now you calm down. It's these kinds of things. It doesn't have to be, running your hand along your, or your finger along your hand or anything like that. You can use these same methodologies to help you in any given situation. If you know specific triggers, if you know specific instances, then you can apply these to that.
I think it makes me think of like fidget items. Like I have a little fidget square that has all sorts of things. And, if I'm left alone for about a minute and a half, all of a sudden I'm doing something fidgety with, something within vicinity of where I'm at. So I definitely have, I can connect in that sense, but I don't think I'm the kind of person that would be like, oh, fuzzy teddy bear. I'm so calm now. But hey, whatever.
It can
to
be
each his own.
If you've got a phone holder on your dashboard, if you've got an air freshener in your vent, if you've got, I'm just thinking of anything in your car that isn't something that you would normally reach out and touch. Put something in there. I mean, you can put a little rock in your cup holder. You can put some double stick tape of a rock on a rock and put that on your dashboard. I don't care what it is. But then all you have to do is you train yourself that when you touch that, and so you don't start working on it in the middle of traffic. So go home, sit in your car in a nice calm space.
Mr. Officer, I was just taping a rock to my dash. That's all.
And practice while you're doing these breathing, while you're doing the counting, whatever works for you. And then you touch it. And then that tactile sense will create that neural pathway within your brain that when you touch that, you are calm and you're practicing these. Then when you've got that down, when you're in traffic, you're going to reach over and touch that and you'll feel yourself calming down.
Officer, I didn't cause the accident. Actually, Joe did, because he told me to close my eyes, breathe, and touch the rock. And so I did.
That is not what I said. Okay? I said touch the rock. I said nothing about closing your eyes.
Hey, to our listener, we are not responsible for any damages caused by any. Okay, so anyway, the techniques here, basically, use them all. Use whatever feels comfortable. These are just quick tactics that we are familiar with, little hacks that we are familiar with to help kind of in the moment, in the heat of the moment, when you're on the go, to smooth over some moments of stress. But if you are, let's say you're in a hurry, and you just stop in at the Juicy Crab and pick up a bite to eat, and you and your friends do this. Great place to do this at. Juicy Crab. They're in Cobb County, Georgia. But anyway, some of these friends, they racked up a tab of about $100, and then they dashed. The good old fashioned dine and dash.
Shameful.
Used to do that in the olden days, I think. I don't know very many people who do it now, but I guess it still happens because, man, that's such a terrible thing to do to people. Don't do that, guys. Yeah. But anyway, I'm not naming names or anything like that in this, but if you do, don't leave a cell phone. Like, don't. That's really, really dumb. Okay, but I'm just giving you some tips. Also, so the suspect that they figured out left their cell phone On the lock screen, so all you had to do is click the screen or the phone open, was a beautiful selfie of this person. I mean, they were so self-absorbed that they had a picture of themselves. I'm like, man, I am hot. This is my lock screen picture. Why? Like some people put their name, like if lost or stolen, find me here, like all this, you know. But no, this was straight up a picture of this person. And it so happened that this person, the suspect, the police identified as the, well, hold on. One of the employees, as they were taken off, took a picture of the license plate. So they had that. They had tracked the license plate to the address, had a picture of the guy, which also matched the description of a murder suspect, wanted for murder in the same area. So within hours, this person was found. The vehicle was found at the address this person lives at, all because they left their phone at a dine and dash. Moral of the story, don't be this person. Like, all of it's wrong. Like, all of it's wrong. It's not any good advice other than don't be that person, okay? Don't dine and dash. Don't murder people. And,
Dumb.
Criminals are dumb.
That's the moral of the story. Criminals are dumb.
All right, we have far exceeded the length of our show. This is probably record.
I apologize, guys. This is my fault.
Honestly, it was really, really valuable stuff, and so I could not say no to continuing with this. I'm sorry about the lengthy half an hour build up to it, but I hope that as we went along, you have some really, really valuable tools that are helpful for what you're doing and what we go through on a daily. I know this isn't a cure, but it is something that, to be honest, can lead to a better mental health. And that's the goal in sharing this, and not going, man, we're out of time, I can't share the next really valuable thing for your mental health. Sorry, time here, like it's that. We can blame it on that. No, honestly, we've reached the end of our show for the day. And don't worry, we'll be back. We're going to be back. I know our listener is really distraught right now, but don't worry, try some breathing techniques and mini visualization stuff, mini mindfulness. You shall be good. Guys, life's too short. So keep laughing and keep learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.